Well, hey there. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a very special episode for you along with our friend and Stepfamily expert, Ron Deal. It's always a privilege to connect with Ron and glean wisdom from him. And while our focus of the conversation is on Ron's new book called Preparing to Blend, which is amazing, there are some great nuggets of wisdom here that will help you no matter what stage of the blending journey that you might be in.
All right, well, let's hop into our conversation with Ron just on the other side of the intro. And while we get started, don't forget to hit subscribe or follow wherever you might be listening, and take a moment to leave a rating and a review. We so appreciate hearing from you. Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your stepfamily from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of stepfamily life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, hey, Ron, welcome back to the Blended Family Coaching
Yes.
Show. We're so excited that you're here.
Kim, Mike, thank you for having me. I love you guys, love your work and what you're doing for families, and so it's an honor to be with you.
Thank you for those kind words, Ron.
Well, hey, we are so excited to hear that you are launching a new book. And I'm wondering if maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, book number 9 from me.
Wow.
Number 15, actually, in the Smart Step Family series of books with other authors that have combined, is called Preparing to Blend. You know, a few years ago, I released a book called Dating and the Single Parent, which really took somebody from just beginning to date or even thinking about dating all the way through the dating experience up until a decision to get married. Then it kind of dropped them off and said, good luck with all that. And it wasn't quite that bad. But now that you're engaged, well, now what do you do to get ready for the wedding, not just for you as a couple, but as a family? So Preparing to Blend is the companion book. Now, it's taking seriously dating or engaged couples through the process of saying, all right, let's not just plan for a wedding. Let's figure out how we're going to be a family. And here was my goal, and this is pretty high-level goal.
Okay.
I didn't want to just give people information. I wanted to help them do some things that would actually increase their momentum toward becoming a family, even before the wedding took place. Not just the couple, but including the kids, right? Okay, that's where we kind of went sideways. Most premarital counseling is only with the couple. I wanted to do something that would include the children and help everybody increase their momentum towards being a family.
That's awesome, Ron. Yeah, as people who only work with the couples, but we know the challenges and the pain that the kids might feel. And I'm a product of a blended family. I was grew up in a blended family, and I know how painful it can be for kids.
Yeah. Well, the book is fantastic.
It is. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it with us. It's great. You know, I wonder, what's the benefit? Maybe talk a little bit more about the benefit of preparing, doing this premarital preparation.
Right.
You know, I really think I've just come to call it a premarital gap for pre-blended family couples. I mean, look, the research is really clear. A couple who goes through premarital counseling, 2 things research is very clear about. Number one, the quality of their relationship goes up at least 30% on most of the level scales: communication, managing conflict, overall sense of intimacy and togetherness, and how they share values. 30% increase just from the premarital counseling. And the long-term effect is it lowers their risk of divorce by 31% over time. It's a no-brainer, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to give yourself a running start into your marriage. Premarital counseling works. But here's the catch. 75% of pre-step family couples don't get any premarital counseling, don't even read a book, don't even have a conversation with a marriage mentor or a couple that's married and a few years ahead of them, do nothing. 75% do nothing. They lose out on the opportunity to grow and enhance and strengthen their relationship and get ready to be a family.
They really do.
Yeah, for sure.
Why do you think that is, Ron? What's your take on that?
You know, I don't know. Have you guys seen the meme that says the brain? It's an amazing thing. It works 24/7 from the moment you're conceived until you fall in love. You know, there's something to that, right? I mean, we sort of get, you know, completely overwhelmed by this person and this feeling and this thing and this thought of being married and together and romance, and it's going to be great. And we sort of say, yeah, because it feels right, it's got to be right. And we don't really have to work at this.
Yeah.
And that's just not life. I want to throw something by you guys because, you know, we think and talk and write and speak to people about blended family living. And, you know, isn't there a part of you that would think, okay, but yeah, Ron, but somebody who has been through a first marriage kind of discovered, hey, take some work. You gotta work at your relationship. Oh, and then they experience a divorce, death of a spouse, like something bad happened and they've been through hard. They're going to know better the next time around. They're not going to have the same naivete when it comes to forming a new relationship. You would think they would be almost really vigorous in making sure. Right. And to some degree, we find that that's true of some couples in some ways, but in other ways, Kim, to your question, it's sort of like, yeah, but I love him or her, and it's just going to work out. Like we kind of go back to stop thinking anymore.
Yeah.
Has that been your experience working with couples?
Well, I'm actually thinking really personally, not just working with couples, but in our own journey. Yeah. I'm kind of curious of what that triggered thought process-wise in Kim.
Well, I think to some extent when we were moving towards marriage, I had some blinders. You know, I didn't want to look at the realities, and it was kind of, let's just throw caution to the wind. And Mike is my third husband. So you'd think I would have learned. But I did go in with the caveat that you will be willing to do counseling when we hit bumps in the road. I knew that we would hit places where we needed help. But yeah, I went to your workshop a week before our wedding, and it was good. It was good. The blinders came off, but it was also hard. It was hard to look at those realities.
You mind if I ask a question? So when the blinders came off at the workshop, was there a part of you that was sort of angry or mad or irritated, you know, at me, or just sort of at the reality of, the bubble got burst, and
the bubble got burst. Yep, the fantasy was gone.
Mike wasn't nearly as cool as he was the week before that.
You trumped onto that stage with a whole bunch of luggage, baggage.
Yeah, you're right.
And you unpacked that baggage, and my jaw was on the floor, literally. Just, I don't want to know about this. I want to go in with blissful ignorance. But looking back with hindsight, I mean, I did, you know. But in hindsight, I'm really thankful that Mike drugged me to that workshop.
You know, I will say this, and thank you for your candor, because I don't think you're alone in that. And I also don't think that everybody necessarily chooses to just be blind to everything. I think there's just certain topics, though. For example, in my experience, we're working with couples, they've spent some time talking about money, or they spent some time talking about, you know, we're going to have to merge, and your kids are going to have to get to know me. And they have some general conversations around it. What they don't do is dial down. What they don't do is get real specific. And they talk sort of about parenting. I've noticed you do it this way. I do it that way. Okay. But then they don't drill further. They don't get into, but how are we going to do this? And I think sometimes the reason is they intuitively know, well, this could be a source of conflict. And hey, we're engaged. We're planning a wedding. We don't have time to have conflict. So it sort of just gets pushed aside by necessity. You know, the three of us would agree, okay, you can't just push it aside. And it's not a good idea, because what happens is, I mean, here's a firm belief I have. If you work on this stuff before the wedding, it eases the transition after the wedding. If you wait until the conflict hits after the wedding, and you're already living life, doing stuff, now the ante just went up about 100%.
Yep.
Right.
And it feels like it's worse than it really is. And now all of a sudden it's harder to begin to problem solve and figure it out. I really think if you do the work on the front end with you and kids, you're so much better off than trying to figure it out later.
Absolutely. I think you protect yourself from going in unprepared and stumbling into some relational damage with the kids. I mean, we've heard horror stories of things that happen because we just didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
And now there's all kinds of regret and kids that are pushing back, and it's really tragic.
Yeah.
You make a good point. You can't unscramble eggs. Is that how they say it? You know,
right.
So much better to nurture those eggs on the front end, you know, to not break or crack them where then you're trying to put it all back. You can't do that.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Oh, gosh.
For sure.
But what you just described, Ron, is kind of what we went through because we did some premarital counseling and we even did some blended family specific counseling. And there was a question on the questionnaire
I was just thinking about this.
my parenting of my daughter that actually led to our first ever argument around my parenting.
Well, to be fair, the pastor that was walking us through this, he said, "Hey, fill out these. You know, back then it was the Scantrons. You know, the little bubble sheet. Fill these out, and don't
share them with
your
each
answers
other.
with each
Okay.
other.
No.
You bring them back to me." Well, we totally ignored that and of course, compared our answers, and you know, it's like a 1 to 5 scale, and when there was a statement in there that said something like, you know, I believe that my future spouse is, you know, a strong parent or has strong parenting skills, I think is what it said. And I think I put a 4 instead of a 5.
Oh.
And Kim did not like that.
I was highly offended.
Absolutely. And so I think, you know, it just in my own personal experience, but also from what we hear from couples, especially when they're on that front end, you're battling this blissful love feeling that puts us into, hey, love will conquer all. It'll be fine. The Beatles know what they're talking about. You know, love is all you need. But also when a serious conversation like that comes up and it sparks an argument and you're like, whoa, no, we're supposed to be having fun right now, planning our wedding.
Right.
Then that fear or the awkwardness or the disrupting feeling of that tends to make us back off from those conversations rather than lean in. Because it feels dangerous to the relationship.
Yeah, just like you described, we didn't go to a deeper level on that issue.
No, we didn't. We backed way off.
Yes, and it's sort of like, oh, we got a wedding that's coming, and you know, we can't do this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. You develop a little inertia as a couple when you get engaged and set the date. And now all of a sudden it's sort of everything goes by the wayside. We got wedding plans to make and we're very tunnel visioned and focused on that. Again, I think there's room. We're inviting people with this book to slow down a little bit and alongside planning a wedding. And by the way, one of the chapters is on planning a wedding and including
yes, we love
whatever
that.
they want to be.
Really great.
You know, it becomes a game changer in terms of the overall quality of your relationship as husband and wife, but especially in terms of the kids.
That's great.
Yeah, in hindsight, we should have gone deeper on that issue because that, of course, was one of our biggest problems right out of the gate.
Parenting, for sure. Yeah. So, Ron, the majority of our listeners, I believe, have either already signed a lease together or they've walked down the aisle. There's already in the middle of blending, and somebody right now might be going, why do I need to listen to this episode? Because we're already there. Why do they need to listen to this episode?
Because they have friends and family that they care about.
That's a great answer.
And because their pastor, I don't know if you guys would say this about your pastor who did your premarital counseling, doesn't know what he doesn't know. And you could walk up to him and hand him a copy of the book and say, here is your new pre-blended family program in a box. In a book. I mean, literally, the 10 chapters in this book become 10 sessions We have a free leader's guide. We have a whole website set up, familylife.com/preparing-to-blend, where pastors can go and engaged couples can go to get extras, bonus materials, ideas for the wedding, etc., and a leader's guide for pastors or leaders who want to make this their premarital program. It coaches you on how to take the book and walk a couple through it. You don't have to have all the answers. Let the book do the teaching, but you be the facilitator of the exercises, the activities, I call them, throughout the book. And bam, you've got a premarital program that you've never had before. Right. And it's thorough and comprehensive, and it really will prepare them, and you just get to come alongside couples. Anybody listening right now needs to help their pastor do a better job for the next couple. You've got friends and people you care about. You can hand them a copy, and who knows? I mean, God might use you and your story and your marriage, and you become an ad hoc mentor to a couple. Go to dinner with them. Talk through a few things. Next thing you know, they're in a better place.
Yeah. You know, if I could add to that, absolutely. I mean, handing this or pointing friends, family members, counselors, pastors toward this resource is powerful. And, you know, if you've been married 7, 8, 10 years already, this book is so packed with questions that you may have never asked yourself. And so, you know, I love, gosh, I can't think of, you might be able to think of the author's name, where they talk about beginner's pluck. She was at the Global Leadership Summit a couple of years ago.
Liz something.
I don't think it's Liz Wiseman. It's somebody else. In any case, what a great book talking about how do we get back into our beginner's mindset so that we can have a curiosity approach. And, you know, I think there's some questions in here that 20 years into our marriage, I'm going, I think Kim and I maybe need to talk about a couple of those things.
The growing activities, too, are great.
Yeah. Well, you do bring up a really good point. I tell leaders in the leader's guide, hey, if you got a couple, they're just starting premarital, they're getting married in a month, you don't have time to get through all this stuff. Do what you can. And then keep working with them, you know, even after they're married. I would say the same thing to anybody listening right now. You're in the early seasons. These activities are deeply practical, very helpful to move you. And again, many of them include children. You're going to learn things from the kids. You're trying to help your kids find their voice in the family and contribute to the family as more of a somebody who's a participant in it rather than somebody who's just on the receiving end of things. Everybody's going to get educated in some way, and it's designed to help you move forward with the goal of being a family. That's why you're getting married, right? Right. So even if you're in the early seasons of your blending process, I think you can get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And that kind of leads to another thought that we had that we noticed as we were reading through the book, Ron, where you talk about coupleness versus familyness. And I think you're right. You know, we're so focused early, especially on our coupleness and how awesome, you know, things are going to be for us as a couple. And sometimes we have this expectation around what that means for the whole family coming together. Can you talk a little bit about that whole idea of coupleness versus familyness? Yeah,
it's just so easy when you're falling in love with a person to compartmentalize the relationships. All right, you and I are getting married. We're deciding to till death do us part. That's about you and me. That's coupleness. The kids will adjust. They'll come along. Yes, we know there will be some hiccups and bumps in the road, but we'll figure that out. But what I don't think a lot of people really connect is that the familyness dynamic, the trying to become family, work together as parent, step-parent, kids bonding with step-parents and step-siblings, that whole journey has as much to do with the success of your marriage, your coupleness, as your actual coupleness has to do with the success of your coupleness. In other words, a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, Jeff Parziel, said this once, and I will never forget it. He captured about a 30-minute lecture in one sentence. Couples get married because they've fallen in love with a person, but they divorce because they don't know how to be a family. And if we can prevent that on the front end, if I can help you be a family quicker, sooner, with more precision and less conflict, then your familyness wins and your coupleness wins. just because you're married to a person you love does not mean you will be in love with them later when you're arguing over children.
Right.
That's why blended family couples divorce at a higher rate. Mm-hmm. So you have to go into it thinking dating and engagement is about two things, not one: coupleness and being a family. You got to be mindful of that. I say the same thing in the other book I wrote for dating singles called Dating and the Single Parent. You know, that gets you as far as engagement. But after that, now how do we keep the momentum rolling as we're headed towards a wedding? That's what Preparing to Blend is all about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's good, Ron. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. It's
really
so
helpful.
important to understand that.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that struck me, I think, you know, we struggled with this in our journey, and we hear this from lots of couples as well, is I think it's in the 3rd chapter, you talk about expectations, these unrealistic expectations we have going in. And, you know, I've heard it said that all disappointment comes from unmet expectations.
Yeah.
So if I didn't expect something in the first place, then what do I have to be disappointed about? And so getting our expectations in line and making sure they're realistic and all that, I find that to be really important in many areas of life, blended family life included.
Yeah. And you know, some of our expectations we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of like, I've never said this out loud, but I guess I always thought you would do such and such.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
In your role as my spouse or as the parent, you know, step parent to my kids or whatever.
Yep.
And it's sort of like life then teaches you, oh yeah, not only did I have that expectation, but it was the wrong expectation.
Yeah.
And I've been frustrating you by trying to push our family into making that happen.
Right.
So, yeah, I've spent a lot of time, spent 30 years working with blended families and kind of consolidating those expectations down to a little list and just inviting people to look at it and go, oh yeah, I never really said that out loud, but I think that's what I assume is going to happen.
Yeah.
And some of these
And how now then do I back away from that a little bit? And what's reality and how can we work with reality?
Yeah. How do I reset that expectation into something that's going to help us rather than hinder us?
So we can keep moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you know, guys, it's not like you have to cancel the expectation, or I think sometimes it's just an adjustment. Maybe the word is recalibrate. You know, we thought everybody's going to love each other. Oh, well, they will, but not necessarily A, in the way that you thought, or B, at the pace at which you thought it would happen.
Right.
You know, you thought in 6 months everybody would love each other the same, but really it might be some years before that's true. And it also will be true that step brothers and sisters will not necessarily love each other the same way the biological brothers and sisters do. That you can love your stepchildren and it's still a little awkward when you hug them. You know, it's not awkward at all when you hug your own kids, but it's still a little we're still working through that. That doesn't mean you don't love them, but it's different. So there it is. The expectation just needed to be adjusted, recalibrated in some ways.
We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion. Yeah. I wonder if we could dive into just a couple of those. Would that be okay?
Yeah, you bet.
A couple that kind of stood out to us. One of them is, my relationship with my children won't have to change.
You know, here's the truth. when you fall in love with somebody and get married, there's less of you to go around.
Yeah.
I mean,
true.
your kids, think about it, single parent, they had you basically exclusively 24/7 for however long it's been since your spouse died or the divorce. They've had you for, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years. And hey, mom was always met with an answer and no delay. And now when you say, hey, mom, mom says, I'll get back to you. What do you mean get back to me? For 10 years, you didn't have to get back to me. What? Something's changing here. The relationship is changing. Now, you still love them and they still love you. The core of it is not any different, but your time and your energy and your availability is dramatically different.
Absolutely.
And therefore, kids are always trying to make sense out of that. So does that mean I'm less important than I used to be? Does that mean you're now showing your love to your stepchildren, my step-siblings? Because it seems like you give them answers and you got to get back to me, but you're available to them.
Right.
Who knows how kids make sense of that? Oftentimes it's not good, right? It's the wrong conclusion. But here's the point. Something's going to have to change.
Right.
And if you go into this blind and think nothing changes, then you aggravate your children inadvertently. You aggravate them because they experience the change and it's profound.
Right.
And you don't even notice.
Right.
Let me give you one other change that I think a lot of people have really never thought about. I do write about this in the book, in the chapter on loss. When you're a single parent, you grieve together with your children. It's just we're surviving life. We're getting through. Yes, we're dealing with the death of the parent or whatever the story is. And it's sort of like you and me against the world. We're going to make it together. When you then form a new marriage relationship and shift some of your energy to the future rather than thinking about and dealing with the past, it's sort of like you stop grieving with your kids and they now are left alone to grieve without you. And they don't really know what that means. And that's weird. And they don't have the maturity sometimes, even if they're 30, to grieve on their own. And so it's sort of like they get abandoned. Now, you never meant it that way. You never perceived it that way. In your heart and mind, you're still just as available to them as you've ever been. But you don't bring it up anymore. You don't talk about Dad's death as nearly as much. Why? Because your new husband's in the room, and that's just a little weird. And so you don't bring it up. Well, you used to. So what does that mean? Are we forgetting Dad? You could see how this spins in all sorts of directions.
Right.
Something is changing in the nature of your relationship with your kids. You got to admit that. You got to not only anticipate those changes, I say begin talk about them. So you give some definition of what this means and what it does not mean. You help your kids know you're still there.
Yeah. Help your kids process through the change.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, not to keep turning some of these stories back on our own experience, but maybe it's therapy time with Ron right now for us. I don't know. I think back on, I was 1 year old when my mom passed away. And then I spent time living with my grandparents, my natural mom's parents, until I was almost 7. And, I can really, when I think back on it, I don't think until this moment I've ever actually thought about this, but we were grieving together, for sure.
Yeah, because they had lost a daughter.
They lost their daughter. I lost my mom. My grandparents, in a lot of ways, stepped in and parented me for those years. And then when Dad remarried, when I was around 7, the approach was that we were going to leave all of that in the past and just move on.
Yeah.
And the memory of all of that was really just erased. And, I've, my dad and I've reconciled, and I love my dad and I want to honor him. And that was a really tough thing for all of my siblings. And we couldn't just erase. I still, even at this stage of my life, have lots of questions and wonder about Mom and, what was she like, and what will it be like to meet her someday, and all of that.
See, grieving never ends.
But I really experienced that. No.
Grieving never ends, in particular for children who are growing up wondering what life would be like had Mom and Dad not divorced or Mom not died.
Right.
And so now, as a 7-year-old, you're thrust into grieving all alone. you sort of had somebody helping you along the way when you could talk to dad about it, talk to grandparents about it. But those conversations have gone away because there's a stepmom in the room.
Yeah, it was taboo.
It's inadvertent, but you really can't do that to your kids. So the reason we talk about that in this book is to help you recognize that and say, wait a minute, how now do I carve out continual time? Even though I'm dating, engaged, falling in love, new families coming, how do we carve out time for me to connect with my child again about their mom?
Yeah, yeah, so good. I wish we could have done that when I was a kid, and I don't think there was anything malicious about it.
I'm sure there wasn't.
They were trying to do the best they could and try to make decisions that they felt were wise, but just weren't aware. Yeah, that's so good. Well, let's talk about one other expectation. There's several in the book, but let's just look at one more.
This one I really love.
You like holding on to this expectation?
Well, no, I went in with this expectation, so I love that you're calling it out in the book. Things that trouble me will improve after the wedding.
It took 20 years, but they improved.
Again, maybe we're recalibrating the timing or to what degree will they kind of resolve themselves. Here's the big thing. I see a couple of big mistakes that single parents make on the front end. One of them is, okay, we can repair what's been lost. No, you're not repairing. That's another unrealistic expectation. You're not repairing. You're creating a whole new family with a whole new dynamic, and it's not going to be anything like the first. So you're not repairing at all. And the other one is, these little minor irritants that I see in you as an individual before the wedding, love will make them fade away. But again, we got to think not just couple, but family. So this minor irritant I see in how you deal with your former spouse. Not a big deal.
Right.
When the reality is your new partner's former spouse is going to be a huge antagonist to your marriage and your kids and your life, your quality of life, the conflict in your home that comes as a result of their influence in your home. Like, you ought to look at that seriously before getting married.
Right.
It's not going to get better. Let me tell you, weddings, funerals, births, and deaths exaggerate stressors in our life. They don't make them happy. They make them worse. And so getting married and forming a new family and all the change that comes along with that is probably going to end up exacerbating that thing with your new spouse's former spouse.
Sure.
Yeah. Don't turn a blind eye to that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think we did to some degree. And certainly, I mean, we still hear often from couples, it's
stories.
like, when it's just our coupleness and we're not dealing with our familyness, including our extended familyness.
Yes, right.
When it's just us.
When it's just us, we're great.
Everything's wonderful.
Then enter the child or enter an ex or, whatever that might look like. All of a sudden, it gets really, really difficult. And the wedding didn't make a difference for that. In fact, like you said, it exacerbated it. And now we're under one roof and we're experiencing it all the time. We can't get away from it. All of those elements come into play.
I mean, you just hit on something. We can't get away from it. I mean, that automatically ups the intensity.
Right.
It was an irritant, the way you deal with your former spouse and the way she deals with you and the name calling. And boy, that frustrates me for you. Now I'm going home.
Right.
Have fun with that.
Have fun with that. But now that we're married, wait a minute, it's dinner time and your phone's ringing and you're going to answer it? No. This is family time. Well, what do you mean you got to take that call? No, she shouldn't be able to interrupt our dinner. Well, she is. That's reality. Guess what? We got to deal with reality. And again, my encouragement in this book, Preparing to Blend, is that you get out in front of that kind of stuff before it ever happens. You get a plan, you have the conversation, you try to figure out your game plan, and you start working on that now, even before you actually get married.
Yeah. And really examine your expectations and what you believe. We had one stepmom tell us, I thought it was strange that the co-parenting was so enmeshed and they communicated so much and the kids were moving back and forth every other day. But I really liked his kids and I really like his ex. So I thought it would be great. But like you just said, once she was under their roof and experiencing all this dynamic going on around her, it was like, wait, this isn't okay with me. So I think it's just so important for you to examine what you're experiencing, what you believe is going to happen.
Point.
Yeah. I loved that chapter, and partially because as a life coach, I'm all about recalibrating expectations and examining the truth and saying, okay, how do we really take reality now in order to take steps forward to getting to what you want to? I think as a coach, the other thing that I really loved about this book overall, Ron, is the how practical it really is. I mean, it is packed front to back with actual practical steps, practical discussions to have. You call them growth activities throughout the entire book, and every chapter has them. And I just loved how actionable this book is. I might ask you a bit of a challenging question. You cover everything from expectations, like we just talked about. You mentioned earlier, planning your wedding. Co-creating that familyness, anticipating what's going to change, merging money, you talk about, which is
parenting.
A big deal. Yeah, all of that. Parenting is huge. So for our discussion right now, if I could challenge you and say, okay, Ron, if I could only allow you to choose two things, two activities that you would tell every couple, you got to do this now, what would those two be?
Tell us about these growing activities and share with us the ones that you think are most impactful, because they're spread throughout the book. Every chapter is just packed with these growth activities.
I've been working with couples and families for 34 years or something.
And you started when you were like 10?
Yes, I did. I'm just older than you think. I have done a lot of premarital counseling and worked with couples in a lot of different situations. And, I don't want to just talk. I want to do.
Right.
And so when I wrote this, I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be a pastor's tool someday to do premarital counseling with a pre-stepfamily couple.
Yeah.
And if I just give them stuff to, some ideas and concepts, and they can just talk about it, here's what's going to happen. The couple in the midst of their fog of love, and the pastor in the midst of not knowing what he doesn't understand about stepfamilies, they're all going to say, yeah, right, that's it. Just, this is the way you're going to parent, step-parent. It'll be fine. But here's reality. When you start doing something with this concept, you uncover things you did not already know. Okay, so to that end, that's why we created the growing activities, not just talk about it, actually do something. And here's my goal, increase the momentum of your relationships as you move toward the wedding. So you're not starting to become a blended family at the wedding. You've already got some momentum underneath you and you're running by the time the wedding happens. That is my goal.
So good.
So if I had to boil it down to two, one of them might surprise you, and I'll tell you why. And then so here they are. Planning your wedding. And the second one is the chapter on co-creating terms, labels, how you're going to refer to one another and talk to one another and about one another.
Okay.
So let me just unpack.
Yeah.
First of all, the wedding one. When I started this project, I had this as the last chapter in the book. Then I started looking into the research about the importance of weddings when it relates to a blended family specifically. And I went, oh my, I got to move this up. This needs to come sooner rather than later. This is not an afterthought. This is a strategy.
Right.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm convinced most people underestimate the importance of children having a say, A, in this whole family new thing coming. B, there's a wedding and you want me to be there. Well, what if I don't want to be there? Now you want me to do that? I don't want to play that role. I want to just be over here and do this. When you don't consider the children and their feelings and their thoughts and their wishes and desires, it's another bad experience for them in a story, a book of stories of bad experiences where somebody made something happen they didn't want. Somebody died, somebody divorced, somebody walked out. I haven't seen dad in 3 months. It's another bad experience. But if you do this strategically in a way that includes the children, invites them to be a participant to whatever degree they're comfortable with, you are empowering a child who basically has had a series of disempowered moments in their life where everybody else made decisions and they just had to live with it. And now they're getting a chance to contribute to it. Now, some kids are going to say, nope, I want to sit on the pew and I don't want to do anything. You guys get married. Other kids are going to bring great energy to the wedding experience, and they get a marker in their life that will stand the test of time. The reason we have weddings, I mean, you can get married without a big shindig wedding. You can do that. People do it all the time. They run to Vegas and they get married. But when it's a big deal and you got pictures and you've got video and you've got people who witnessed it, and you got stories to tell about the wedding and the rehearsal and the after dinner and the cake, all of a sudden it's a marker in the ground where life changed.
You've built a memory.
You want your kids to have a marker in the ground where life changed, and they were a part of it. I have been convicted. This is important. And so we try to walk people through a process of figuring that out with their children, so that they can have a great wedding experience.
That's so great. I mean, I noticed, I think it was right in chapter 1, you pretty well called that out as well. You're like,
I did.
Hey, if you're only a month or so away, like skip to that chapter.
Skip to the chapter on the wedding.
Check it out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then the other thing we said is, pretty much follow the course, the order of the chapters, because there's a method to my madness. But the wedding stuff, you can jump into that anytime you need to, because it's important that you think through it. Quick little story in the book. Months ago, while we were still doing the editing on this book, I floated the manuscript to a number of engaged couples and got some feedback from them. And one of the couples, it was so compelling, their story, that I actually included it into the chapter, and I tell this story. But essentially, they read that chapter and they said, oh, we had no idea how important a wedding was. We were planning to elope. Well, we're not doing that anymore. Like, that's just out of sight, out of mind for the children. They don't even get to be contributors or even see it or witness it. Like, we're just going to come home married. Like, how weird is that? So they started regrouping. They started going through the growing activity with their children, had a series of conversations, guided conversation that the book provides. And the kids basically said, no, we want to be part of the wedding. We want to do this. Her 2 sons said, we want to give you away. So guess what? They walked mom down the aisle.
Wow.
When the question was asked, who gives this woman to this man? The response was, my brother and I. I mean, how cool is that?
So amazing.
Very cool.
That would have never happened. Her daughter, the bride's daughter, became her maid of honor. Stood right there beside her, held her bouquet of flowers during the little family wedding ceremony. The entire family created this little idea where they had a blank canvas up on the in front of and after they did their vows and exchanged rings, the entire family put some ink on their hand and they went over and they put their hand on this blank canvas as if to say, we're now putting ourselves to this new family story. And that canvas later had their wedding date imprinted on it, and it hangs in their living room. Right, there's a marker. We get a visual symbol. We're a family. Now, does that mean everybody loves each other the same and all the relationship? No. We still have a journey to figure out exactly the details of this, but we have symbols. Just like you have a wedding ring, they have a symbol in their living room, and everybody got to put their hand to this new family experience. I'm telling you, that's a game changer.
What a way to invite both the coupleness and the familyness
to merge together
into this point where we all say, hey, it's not necessarily going to be perfect, but we're in this together, and here we go.
And imagine what would have been lost if they had run off and eloped.
Exactly. So the book does not say this is how you do a blended family. It doesn't say that at all. What it says is have a conversation and figure out what is important and relevant, and to what degree do your children want to be involved. Try to honor that however you can. let them play the role they want to play. Sometimes they won't want to play any role. Okay, honor that. Now we're not forcing anything.
Yeah.
It just guides you through that journey of figuring it out together.
Yes.
Which brings me to the other chapter.
Hey, before we move to that,
yeah,
Ron,
sure.
Can I add a thought into this? I know that a lot of people who are listening are, I'd love to hear your feedback on this as well. A lot of people are well into their marriage and they're going, that's great. Boy, we missed it there. We didn't do that. One of the things that, we included Annika, Kim's daughter from a previous marriage, in our ceremony. I think we just kind of lucked out and just saying,
we said vows,
hey, here's some things
her.
we want to do. We wrote some vows to her. We gave her a necklace. She still has that necklace and all of that. But another thing that we kind of have done over the years is we've celebrated 2 anniversaries, one in our familyness and one in our coupleness. And we've always included Annika. And it's interesting because we have 2 younger kids, mutual kids, and they're not a part of that actually. And they understand it. They get it. They really do get it.
They weren't there.
And so I think as I think about some of our listeners who are already married, and we don't want you to feel bad of, oh gee, I missed the marker there. But I think at whatever stage you're at, if you think in terms of anniversary and all that,
right?
Depending on where your kids are and what your connection is and what their comfort level is of talking about this kind of thing, it's possible that you could go to a child and say, I've been thinking, you've been a part of this since day one, and maybe we've been together 5 years and we haven't really done this before, but this year, I would love for us to celebrate an anniversary together and just commemorate where we're headed and start now building some of that inclusiveness with the kids, wherever maybe they're even adult kids, but bringing them into that discussion and celebrating that and doing something positive. Again, there's so many things that go into where you are in this journey and all that. But what are your thoughts about that, Ron?
Absolutely. In the book, The Smart Stepmom, I opened the book with a story about a woman and her husband who at year 7 stumbled into a family moon, is what they and the kids began to call it. Year 7, they went to this woman and her husband went to her 3 stepdaughters and said, hey, we're getting away for our anniversary. Yeah. And because of the work that they'd been doing over the past 7 years, because of the crock-potting they've been doing in developing relationships, the kids said, oh, wait a minute. We know that's your anniversary, but, it's really the start of all of us. And can we go with you? And so this couple had that moment where they were like, no, we don't want you to go. It's just us. And then they rethought it and they were like, well, wait a minute. This represents a change. The shift has taken place here where instead of us having a hard stepmom, stepkids relationship, it's gotten better. Maybe we should celebrate what's changed. And so they did. They had a family moon, a family anniversary.
Awesome.
And not necessarily even something they did every year, but just that year, it was symbolic and representative of what has taken place. Yeah. That's the thing about rituals. That's what they do. Here's the larger takeaway for anybody listening. Weddings don't come at the beginning of dating.
Right.
No, the wedding is the culmination of falling in love and making commitments. And then it's a marker in the sand and a line has been drawn and things are different now. Anytime, for any reason, you have one of those moments in your family, and maybe it's just a one-on-one relationship with one child where you have gotten to, it's a culmination of a lot of work. By golly, figure out a way to celebrate that, to put a marker in the sand. Make a little ritual. And it could be you and I are going to a baseball game. We're going to eat hot dogs all night long and we're going to have a grand time because we've arrived. Something's changed. And now you talk forever about that night you went to the baseball game and you just spent all that money on hot dogs and had a blast. Guess what? That's kind of like a wedding, in terms of the emotional significance for your family, it represents something. Those are great mementos to create.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thanks for that feedback, Ron. Yeah. I feel a little affirmed in what was
good for you.
We're back to therapy with Ron. For that.
Thanks, Ron.
So So we said, hey, if you had to pick two, what would those two? So the first one is the wedding. Tell us a little bit about the second one.
Yeah, I'm just a firm believer in this chapter on co-creating labels and terms, what we're going to call each other. Mm-hmm. On the surface, this sounds like, okay, are you going to call me stepmom or smom or bonus mom or Miss Julie or Julie or dad's wife Julie, or that's what it seems like on the surface.
Yep.
But what it means underneath the surface is we are bringing definition to our relationship in a way that you and I can agree together on what you'll call me and what I'll call you. Mm-hmm. And together we go forward from here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You have problems when one person forces a label on the other. No, I'm not your stepmom. I'm your mom. Yeah. We got a problem immediately. You've just tried to erase and replace my biological mother, and I'm not going to let you do it. And now we have resistance. You just made it worse, not better. That's what a lot of people do, unfortunately. And instead, how respectful to say, I will never try to replace your mom. Your mom is your mom. That's an important relationship. And that label should be reserved for your mom. Now, if you choose to use that for me sometime, I'm okay with that. But I just want you to know that I don't expect that at all, ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about what you would feel comfortable calling me. And we're going to do it in different contexts. Calling me at home, just around the house. Mm-hmm. Calling me when you're introducing me to someone in public.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What are you going to call me when your mom is in the room and she can hear you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, there may be 3 entirely different answers to those questions. So you can see how important this conversation is. The child feels respected. They feel honored in their relationship with their connection to their mom. They feel like I get a say in this. Well, I want to call you jerk. No, you can't call me jerk. That's not respectful. I can't go with that. Let's try something else.
Right.
And we are co-creating our familyness today. Mm-hmm. Now, this is just where it starts. It didn't mean it's going to end up there. Someday, the story I just told you about the family moon, that was year 7.
Right.
I ran into that couple 16 years after their original wedding. So what's that? Another 11 years later after the family moon, I ran into him again. Mm-hmm. And she told me for the first time the stepdaughter she'd had the most trouble with had asked her if she could call her mom.
Yeah.
Now, that was awesome. A long 16-year journey.
Yep.
But they're still trying to co-create familyness.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that chapter is really helpful for people and kids so that they know what to expect from one another as they roll into being a family.
Yeah. And, something I just heard in that story you told is keeping in mind as you're navigating that, especially early on. And you're right. Sometimes kids are like, well, I just want to call you, by your first name or even more formal, Mr. or Mrs. or something like that. Keep in mind that as you explore that, this is going to be an ongoing conversation over the course of your future.
Yes.
And it's probably just a season right now, and it likely will change. The more you nurture that relationship and it grows, the more intimate that label might become. Exactly. And so don't get too hung up. At least my thought is don't get too hung up on this being forever because we're choosing this right now.
And don't take it personal.
Yeah. Which that's hard. That's easier said than done. But it is something you have to keep your mindset wrapped around.
What I love about that chapter, Ron, is that you're getting to the nitty gritty of the awkwardness of blending. Yeah. Let's just call it out and talk about it and get it up to the surface and help the kids manage this. Yeah.
And it starts with the parents, the future step parents saying, hey, I'm never going to replace your mom. You don't have to worry about that. Now that is out of the way, let's just figure out how we're going to get through the day.
Yeah. Right. Let's get practical.
And so you hit on it, Kim. Like we're taking, it's awkward. And it's representative. Again, it's symbolic of we don't even know how to think of one another. I mean, everybody in the world who's ever been married has gone through this with their mother-in-law and father-in-law, all right? Yeah. I mean, how do you introduce them in public?
Right.
This is, well, here's my husband or my wife, and here's my mother-in-law. Is that what's comfortable? When you say it out loud in front of her, do you see her cringe? Like she's like, well, mother-in-law, that's just mean. I don't want you to call me mother-in-law. And now you're going, oh, did I say the wrong thing? Like, no, let's just get all that out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And let's have a conversation and figure it out together.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody asserts on top of anybody else. Nobody gets pushed around. Everybody has a voice.
Yeah.
Let's figure out today. Tomorrow we'll figure that out tomorrow. But today, this is how we're going to do life.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you could even talk about, to take it to another level of awkwardness, what do we do when we're out in public and someone refers, like in our case, someone refers to Mike as, oh, your dad can help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Do we correct them, or do we just let it go and not worry about it? Let's
See,
talk
that's a
about
fantastic element to this whole dialogue. And what I say to people in the book is, okay, we're going to figure out today. And, oh, by the way, you're going to revisit all of this as life happens.
Right.
Because the first time you actually introduce, this is my stepdaughter, to the new school teacher or whatever, the first time you say it out loud, it might be so weird. Like, we already talked about it. We said it was going to be okay, but I don't know. That just doesn't quite feel right to me. Or I saw a look in your eye that made me think that you were not okay with that. So let's just revisit that. Would we like to amend whatever we decided? Guess what? You're co-creating familyness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the irony is this. You want to be a family, but most people won't actually talk about how we're going to be a family.
That is kind
So
of ironic,
true.
isn't it? Yeah.
It's so ironic. And so I'm like, hey, let's just pull that thorn and be done with it.
Right.
Have the conversation even before you get to the awkward moving in, making it
love
real
it.
thing.
Yep.
And everybody feels honored and respected.
Yeah.
And I think that awkwardness when you're in private in your own space, and it's just the, two of you or the three of you or the five of you or however you have that conversation, it's a lot less awkward there than it is when you are in public and someone's like, oh, well, what does your dad think? And they're like, that's not my dad.
Yes.
That's awkward, right?
That's awkward.
That's
And it's
worse.
it's almost offensive at that point. It's like Kim was saying earlier. Now we have something we have to unravel and try to repair.
Yeah.
But again, if we can prevent that from ever happening.
We all have the common knowledge of how we're going to respond and react when these awkward situations come up.
Yeah, I mean, we experienced that plenty of times with Annika, and I loved when we kind of got to the stage or the season where rather than it eliciting a response, she and I just made eye contact and we kind of grinned at each other and we just moved on. What a great milestone that was for us.
But I love how you lay it out in the book.
Yeah.
These are step-by-step conversations.
Yeah.
You give the how to go about this.
Yes.
And it's so valuable. It's so valuable.
Yeah, agreed. Wow, what a power-packed book, Ron. Just so grateful for your investment and your time and your creativity and all of that in the midst of it. We're really grateful to be able to talk to you about this today.
Yes, it's incredible. I have to say, the story in the last chapter made me cry.
I'll admit it made me cry as well.
I'm not going to give a spoiler alert here, but I was bawling.
Yeah.
It was
Very
a beautiful story, and this book is just amazing.
Yeah, so powerful. Well, Ron, what maybe final thing might you have to say to listeners about this?
Let's close that premarital counseling gap for pre-blended family couples. 75% get no training, don't even read an article, let alone have a constructive conversation with each other or with any sort of mentor or pastor. We can change all that with this book. You can just go through it yourself if you want to. It's even better when you sit down with Mike and Kim and go through it with them and let them coach you through this book and the activities and what it means and how you can grow from it. I guarantee you will be in a different place as a family than if you don't do the activities. It will move you forward. It will give you information that you didn't have before, help you make better decisions. So if it's not your life, hand it off to somebody else. Share it with a pastor because they need to start doing a better job helping pre-step family couples. We got to close that premarital counseling gap.
Totally agree. Yeah, I mean, if you're invited to a bridal shower, or
there you go,
or even going to a wedding, or anyone who's getting ready to blend a family. What a great gift, and how easy to give people access to that.
Yeah, grandparents, if you're the parent of a adult child that's remarrying.
Absolutely.
This is a great gift.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm confident this is going to be a staple resource for us, like so many of your resources are, Ron. We really appreciate
Ron,
it.
tell us, when does the book release?
September 14th, 2021.
Okay.
That's when it's available at wherever books are sold, as they say. You can pre-order it now at familylife.com or at amazon.com. I imagine Barnes & Noble has a pre-order as well.
Awesome.
And the official title?
Preparing to Blend, the couple's guide. I wanted to say the couple's DIY, do-it-yourself guide, but they wouldn't let me put that in it. The couple's guide to becoming a smart step family.
Awesome.
Well, Ron, as always, it's really a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing with us about this resource. Thanks for joining us here on the show.
Yes,
we're so
thank
grateful
you.
for everything that you do for Blend
Yes,
families.
we appreciate you so much.
Thank you very much. And I love what you guys are doing. High quality stuff. People listening to you are getting value from your podcast. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Ron. We
Thank
appreciate
you, Ron.
that. Okay, well, I'm sure some point in the future we'll find a reason to have Ron back.
Yes.
I hope so.
All right. Thanks so much, Ron. Wow, what a great conversation with Ron. He always brings such wisdom, and he's fun and really easy to talk with.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And by the way, just to let you know, Ron's new book is a really easy read. It's concise and right to the point and very action-oriented, like you heard.
Now, we trust that this conversation brought you value, whether you're just getting ready to blend or if you've been blending for a while.
That's right. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Remember to leave us a rating and a review, and that's going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.